At the Fang Tower, which is considered the hub of talented magicians, an unprecedented, horrific event is taking place. Professor Childman and his exceptional pupil Azalie secretly conduct an experiment. However, the outcome spirals out of control when a mystical force affects Azalie, transforming her body into a bizarre creature. Terrifying noises echo everywhere, immediately drawing the attention of the magicians in the vicinity. As they prepare to use magic to destroy this strange creature, a young man called Krylin Solo rushes to intervene. Because of his close relationship with Azalie, he cannot allow anyone to harm her. His hesitation and personal feelings lead Krylin Solo to make a grave mistake. The creature takes advantage of the chaos to escape from the tower, disappearing into the night. 5 years after that painful event, Krylin Solo is no longer a student at Fang Tower. He sheds his old name, calling himself Orphen as a way to bury his past. Now Orphen wanders everywhere, working as a freelance magician to make ends meet. However, life is not easy for him. Once he lent money to 2 poor children, but despite his efforts to reclaim it, the money remains unreturned. In a small diner located in the outskirts, Orphen is enjoying a simple dinner as usual after a long, exhausting day. While sipping on his drink, a young waiter suddenly speaks up, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. Was he once part of the academy at Fang Tower? This question causes Orphen to pause momentarily, and although he does not wish to admit it, the small badge on his worn coat says it all. In this era, anyone who had graduated from Fang Tower was highly respected, as it was the only place that trained magicians with superior powers. The Academy's badge is a symbol of power that even the most daring individuals would regard with caution. The next day, as Orphen returns to his house, the 2 children who had borrowed money from him suddenly appear. Their excitement is evident on their faces, as if they bring significant news. They excitedly discuss a grand plan full of potential, a scheme that could potentially bring in a vast amount of money. If all goes well, the financial status of Orphen could be resolved immediately. The promises from the children sound so simple that they are suspicious. Despite his reservations, Orphen decides to try his luck, thinking that things might not be as bad as he fears. However, the harsh reality is nothing like what had been painted for him. The 3 of them quickly fall into a flawed plan, joining a group of thieves to deceive a prestigious noble family in the city. From the very beginning, things are blatantly obvious. As the 2 children endlessly rave about bizarre products, trying to convince customers with flowery but empty words which could make anyone slightly realize the deception. The noble family soon becomes suspicious of the trio's weird actions. They discreetly report to the security forces, planning to catch the entire group as soon as things go too far. During the tense situation, Cleo, the youngest daughter of the family, accidentally discovers a shocking truth when her gaze lands on the worn badge that Orphen carries with him. Memories from many years ago suddenly flood. Back that year, a powerful mage had appeared at their house, leaving behind a cursed sword with a request to keep a secret. Cleo's stories and the scattered details that Orphen observes slowly come together to form a clear picture. He does not need to think long to realize the identity of the person who had entrusted the noble family with the cursed sword. It was none other than Professor Childman, one of the most influential mages in his life. This realization causes Orphen great concern, as it seems everything revolves around the past he wants to bury. As the atmosphere is immersed in tension, suddenly a loud explosion sounds from the neighboring house. The thunderous sound shakes the entire neighborhood, startling everyone present. An instinct arises within Orphen. He rushes towards the source of the explosion. In Orphen's heart, the urge to protect everyone outweighs the fear of the unknown threat. The large door of the house, shattered by the explosion, is ajar, revealing a scene that leaves everyone speechless. Amidst the rubble, a gigantic creature appears. With its massive body and tattered wings, it exudes a terrifying pressure. Orphen needs only a brief glance to recognize that it is not an ordinary dragon, but Azalie. Orphen stands before the gigantic creature, his eyes filled with determination, yet unable to hide his pain. He raises his voice, using the most sincere words to reach the remaining human part inside Azalie. However, all efforts prove futile. The monster shows no signs of listening, its cold eyes filled only with madness and a destructive instinct. In a flash, a monster fires a blast towards Orphen. He quickly steps back, trying to dodge, but the intense heat and swirling smoke make everything blurry. In that chaotic moment, Azalie, in her monstrous form, swiftly lunges forward with a powerful bite, clenching the cursed sword, the item long kept by the noble family, and then flees towards the dense forest outside. The elite team of magicians who had been lying in ambush are fully prepared to act. They were sent to ensure that the creature could not cause further harm. As the monster steps out of the building, powerful magical attacks are immediately launched. Bright lights from the spells illuminate the night. However, just as the attacks are about to hit their target, Orphen suddenly rushes into the fray, exerting all his strength to neutralize the magic. Everything came to a halt in the astonishment of the witnesses. His daring act not only saved Azalie from imminent death, but also paved the way for her to disappear into the shadows, avoiding the encirclement of the mage team. The memory of 5 years ago still persisted in Orphen's mind like a wound that could not heal. Back then, Master Chiltman led a group of young and promising apprentices. All of them possessed incredibly latent power. Among them, Azalie stood out the most as a girl of exceptional talent who was known as the Chaotic Witch due to her extraordinary power. Whenever Azalie participated in practice fights with the Master, the echoes from the clashes not only shook the room, but sometimes caused minor tremors throughout the tower. Master Chiltman's group of apprentices was not only strong in ability, but also had an incredibly close relationship. They were all orphans, but this did not make them feel deprived. On the contrary, the days living together at the Tower of Fang were some of the rare happy times. They regarded each other as family, sharing joys and always ready to protect each other from any danger. Despite the challenges of life, they relied on each other to overcome all obstacles. However, this brief happiness did not last forever. A terrible event descended, shattering everything they cherished. When Azalie turned into a monster and fled from the Tower of Fang, the Academy's council quickly made a calculated decision. To protect their reputation and authority, they declared to the outside world that Azalie had died in a laboratory accident. This announcement was not only a lie, but also a complete denial of responsibility for one of their most brilliant students. The Tower of Fang now used a facade of falsehood to cover up a horrifying event. Orphen could not accept this deception. He continuously requested the lecturers and high-level mages at the Academy to organize a search, hoping to bring Azalie back. Despite his sincere pleas, they were all ignored. They found various reasons to justify their indifference, arguing that maintaining the image of the Academy was more important than rescuing a student who had lost control after being repeatedly denied. Orphen felt his loyalty to the Tower of Fang had depleted. He no longer recognized the place that once served as his second home. Decisively, he abandoned not only the Academy, but also the name Krylan. Returning to reality, Orphen was surprised to receive a direct offer from Master Chiltman. He requested Orphen to undertake a crucial mission to eliminate the monster that both the Academy and the magical community considered a major threat. Master Chiltman speculated that Azalie's goal in seizing the cursed sword was to restore her human body. However, he also expressed doubts about the feasibility of this, as the evil power hidden within the sword was not easily subdued. Orphen listened silently to each word of his former master, feeling torn inside the Tower of Fang. Despite recognizing Azalie's superior strength as a human, now only saw her as a hazard that needed to be eliminated. For them, killing the monster was not only an act of protecting the surrounding residents, but also a way to maintain the Academy's reputation and protect the sacred land from threat. Chiltman did not hide his stance. He emphasized that Azalie's sacrifice, painful as it might be, was necessary for the peace of all. Chiltman had quietly cast a tracking spell on the cursed sword. This spell allowed the group of mages to easily determine Azalie's current location. This was a crucial move in their plan, a step towards ending this painful story. Chiltman believed that with the support from the tracking spell, confronting and eliminating the threat from Azalie would be more feasible than ever. In front of his teacher, Orphen nodded in agreement as though he fully accepted to participate in the mission to hunt down the monster. His expression was serious, but deep inside his mind, he was devising a plan that was completely contrary. Orphen had no intention of following the Academy's orders. Instead, he decided to use the information from the tracking spell to get ahead of the group of mages. Orphen's objective was very clear: to warn Azalie about the impending danger. Just before setting off, Cleo unexpectedly approached Orphen with a special gift. In her palm was a shiny silver ring engraved with ancient, mysterious characters. Cleo explained that this gift was a sincere thank you from her family, a token of appreciation for Orphen's role in protecting them and mitigating the damage from the monster's attack. She did not elaborate on the origin of the ring, only emphasizing that it held a special power capable of saving its owner from the most perilous situations. As Orphen received the ring, his eyes immediately froze, a strange yet familiar sensation invading his mind, as if he had seen this object somewhere before. After a moment of thought, Orphen realized that the ring had once belonged to Azalie. The ancient characters on its surface were not only identification marks, but also clear proof of her original ownership. Although Azalie rarely mentioned the ring, Orphen distinctly remembered her once saying that it was not just an ornament, but also a powerful protective charm. It contained a protective magic capable of saving the owner's life in the most critical situations. However, its power could only be activated once. Silently slipping the ring onto his finger, Orphen felt an indescribable mix of sadness and gratitude. To him, this gift was not merely a repayment from Cleo, but also a link to the past, to memories of Azalie, before everything turned chaotic. Orphen and a team of talented witches were assigned a critical task: Many elite mages have been summoned to join the upcoming journey to counteract dark magic. They also send a high-ranking white mage to ensure a tighter seal. Meanwhile, Orphen unexpectedly decided to pursue a different path, seeking Azalie alone in the hope of restoring her from her monstrous form. Orphen's deep affection for Azalie, rather than being reciprocated, was met with her fury. Azalie, in her dragon form, unleashed violent attacks, and a powerful blast from her breath engulfed the entire forest in flames, turning the scene into a blazing battlefield. The light from the fire reflected off the sky, while Orphen made every effort to prevent the devastation caused by the person he always cherished. The battle was fierce. At the site of the battle, a group of wizards decided to collaborate to precisely locate Azalie in her monstrous form. A coordinated attack plan was launched with the goal of directly damaging and weakening the monster. Amidst the chaos, a high-ranking white wizard conducted a sealing ritual to contain the dark power overflowing within Azalie's body. However, their efforts seemed insufficient to overwhelm her. The monster's strength exceeded initial expectations. At this moment, facing a dangerous situation, Orphen considered a bold plan. He decided to steal a magical sword, hoping to lure Azalie to follow him, pulling her away from the wizards to approach her more safely. However, his reckless idea was easily seen as naive, as Azalie's power far surpassed anything Orphen could control. The situation became complicated as the team of wizards was split into two groups. Heiachia, Orphen's loyal friend, took on the task of chasing him to retrieve the important sword before it fell into enemy hands. Meanwhile, the remaining wizards had to stay behind to continue the battle with the dragon, preventing further destruction. When Orphen and Heiachia returned to the battlefield, the scene that unfolded before them was shocking. The talented wizards who had fought together had mostly fallen, leaving only traces of destruction and failure. Amidst the blood-soaked scene, only Cheldman stood firm, resisting the terrifying power of Azalie in her dragon form. The brutality and madness of the monster made the entire battle area seem engulfed in an unending storm of fire. Before Orphen could think further about his next plan, he was suddenly pierced by excruciating pain. His eyes filled with astonishment as he saw Cheldman's sword deeply embedded in his body. He tried to move, but his body suddenly became rigid, incapable of resistance or movement. Cheldman's cold words resonated like a definitive command. He would heal Orphen's wound, but only after the battle had concluded. Now Orphen's task was to remain silent, forbidden from causing any further trouble until everything was over. Immediately after Orphen was incapacitated by Cheldman, the battle became much easier for the powerful wizard. With no interference or threat from Orphen, Cheldman quickly concentrated all of his power into a decisive blow. In an instant, the dragon was repelled with tremendous force. The attack not only forced the monster's body back, but also caused it to dissipate in a surge of immense power. The dragon was completely blown away, restoring tranquility. But this was just the beginning of a greater pain awaiting Orphen. A look of utmost regret appeared on his face. His eyes filled with pain as he saw his sister lying on the ground, lifeless. The memories of Azalie, whom he had tried to save throughout this time, now seemed to have been completely destroyed by her fury. Amid the silence, Orphen suddenly heard a faint sound emanating from the dragon's corpse. It was Azalie's final words, a fragile ray of hope. In this moment of despair, something in her words unsettled Orphen. He realized that things might not really be over. The next day, Orphen visited Cheldman's residence with conflicting emotions. The last words he had heard from the dragon's corpse the previous day had revealed shockingly that the soul hidden within the monster was not Azalie's at all. Instead, the real Azalie was still alive, but in a circumstance no one had anticipated. She had swapped souls with Cheldman and was now inhabiting the body of her teacher. This soul exchange was not only complex but also harbored many dark schemes. Orphen recalled the events of the past few days when no one noticed the difference. Azalie, in the guise of Cheldman, had adeptly played the part, maintaining the stern and authoritative demeanor of a seasoned wizard, while Cheldman was imprisoned in her body. It seemed that Azalie had planned everything in advance. By continuing to perfectly play the role of the teacher, she could survive and let Cheldman die instead of her. Orphen understood better than anyone the danger of the situation. He knew that Azalie had gone too far, and that the crimes she had committed needed to be punished. His visit today was not as a desperate brother or a young wizard seeking answers, but with a resolve to end everything. Orphen's gaze was filled with determination. He was no longer the child who only hoped and waited, but a wizard prepared to face the horrific consequences that Azalie had created. Azalie's sword thrust towards Orphen with a decisive intent, but it could not touch him. Instead of feeling the pain from his sister's attack, Orphen stood calmly. This was thanks to an ancient ring engraved with ancient symbols that he had swallowed earlier. The power of the ancient ring created an invisible protective layer that shielded him from the deadly strike, allowing him to quickly counterattack. A powerful counterstrike from him surged towards Azalie. At that moment, Orphen realized that victory or defeat in this battle did not really matter. His mind was not obsessed with destroying Azalie, but with a desire to save her. Orphen did not want to push Azalie into a corner with no escape. His goal was not to kill her, but to liberate her, to rescue the sister he once loved from the darkness and madness that had taken over her mind. Orphen paused and looked deeply into Azalie's eyes. He spoke in a calm but forceful voice, stating that children had never intended to kill the dragon. Their teacher had chosen to step into the battlefield not to destroy, but to find a way to save Azalie, to help her become human again. What Childman wanted was to bring about a peaceful ending where no one had to die. But instead of being grateful, Azalie chose to repay kindness with vengeance. Not only did she take over the body of their teacher, but she also personally ended his life, affirming the cruel path she had chosen. Orphen suddenly recalled the days gone by when both he and Azalie were studying at the Magic Academy. Although Azalie was always known as one of the most outstanding wizards, surpassing others in strength and skills, it was Orphen who was chosen to inherit the mantle of Razor, a symbol of supreme power. Razor was not just a symbol, but also carried significant influence in the world of dark wizards, especially in training Fangs. The holder of this inheritance would have significant influence and power, leading the next generation of young wizards. This created an invisible gap between the siblings as Azalie felt left behind in the race for fame and power. In Orphen's memories, there was a special day when they decided to return to the orphanage where they had grown up together. This orphanage held countless memories from their childhood, a place where their bond was formed not only because of their closeness, but also because they had no one else to rely on. Without parental love, many children in the orphanage had to seek solace in each other. This bond made Orphen and Azalie closer than ever. In those moments, they were not just wizards competing for power, but siblings. They revisited memories of a peaceful past before being swept into the complex currents of the magical world. Orphen always felt that the memories of the orphanage were indelibly etched in his mind. Those were the rare moments when he and Azalie were not weighed down by the pressures of fame and responsibility. Orphen knew that these memories retained a part of his affection for Azalie, despite all the crimes she had committed. Later, he could not forget them. On their way back to the Magic Academy after visiting the orphanage, Orphen noticed something unusual. When Azalie suddenly disappeared without a trace, concern crept into his heart and Orphen immediately began his journey to find her, hoping to see his sister soon. However, despite traveling many roads and asking everywhere, darkness quickly fell and there was still no sign of Azalie's presence. Darkness gradually enveloped every corner, adding to his tension. Orphen continued his search in a nearby abandoned house where he thought he might find a clue. The space inside the house was gloomily dark and silent. As he tried to inspect the surroundings, suddenly a faint shadow emerged from a hidden corner and charged straight at Orphen. The attack was so swift that he barely had time to react, although he was ready in a defensive stance. The invisible strikes from the enemy were not only elusive but also left Orphen feeling helpless as he couldn't accurately pinpoint their origin. The wave of attacks continuously pushed him into a dangerous position. Despite being a skilled wizard, Orphen was unable to counter the strange assault of this ghost. When pushed to the brink, Orphen knew he had to resort to a different tactic. In an instant, he decided to activate an ancient spell called Mind Closure, one of the few spells he used only in the most critical situations. As soon as the spell was activated, Orphen felt his mind detach from reality. And immediately the vague enemy began to fade away as if it had never existed in reality. The faint shadow was a spell created by Azalie. Outwardly, she smiled and said that she just wanted to tease her younger brother. But deep down, her purpose was not so simple. Azalie wanted to test their strengths to see who was truly stronger between them. This curiosity stemmed not only from the instinct of a talented wizard, but also from a covert need to affirm her position in Orphen's eyes. Yet she could not deny that her younger brother had grown and was becoming stronger, capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with her in confrontations. This was both satisfying and somewhat unsettling for her. After that unexpected attack, reality gradually returned to both of them. Orphen, realizing that Azalie had no real intention of harming him, felt perplexed. Meanwhile, Azalie seemed to have realized something deeper. Orphen's words about their teacher, Childman, had awakened her from the delirium of power and hatred. She suddenly realized that all of her actions had been contrary to her teacher's wishes. Childman had never intended to kill her, never saw her as an enemy. On the contrary, he was ready to sacrifice not only to save her, but also to bring her back to the right path. This truth struck Azalie's soul forcefully, causing her to feel remorse and regret. The sins that Azalie had committed were irrevocable. Even if she paid with her life, she could not change the painful events that had occurred. The only thing she could do now was to live up to everything that teacher Childman had hoped for. No longer obsessed by hatred or the desire for power, Azalie was determined to become the person her teacher had always hoped she would be. Azalie looked at Orphen one last time, her determination clear in her eyes. From now on, she would live as her teacher wished, and that was the only way to atone for all her mistakes. On their adventure journey, there were not only challenges and dangers, but also two quite unique companions, Magic and Cleo. Magic, a young and enthusiastic teenager with a dream of becoming a skilled wizard, had decided to follow to learn and hone his magical skills. However, his enthusiasm sometimes caused quite a bit of trouble for Orphen, as Magic was still inexperienced in controlling his power. Cleo, on the other hand, a young girl, had a completely different reason for following Orphen. Not because of a desire to learn magic or seek knowledge, but simply because the boredom of everyday life had driven her to seek out thrilling adventures. Climbing Cleo's mischievous and lively nature often led to many comical situations. Orphen knew well that even if he tried to send them away, both would not easily give up. Therefore, instead of continuing to argue, he reluctantly agreed to let them accompany him, at least for the next few days. Although slightly annoyed, Orphen understood that they had become an indispensable part of his journey. The next destination for the group was the land of Tarframe, a place of mystery and antiquity. Not only famous for its pristine beauty, Tarframe was also the location of the Fang Academy, which had trained many of the most powerful wizards, including Orphen and Azalie. Tarframe not only evoked memories of the past, but also opened up many new mysteries and challenges waiting ahead. The group of three walked down the path leading to the Tarframe, each carrying a different mood. Magic was eager, looking forward to the new knowledge he could gain. Cleo happily enjoyed his journey of freedom. Orphen, with a distant look in his eyes, knew that the upcoming journey would be more than just a trip through a new land. It might well be a confrontation with many dark secrets of the past and inevitable truths. To avoid attracting attention, Orphen decided to take a detour, staying away from the watch stations scattered throughout the area. He understood that these guard stations could report the presence of a mage in the forest to the church, an organization that held deep animosity towards mages. The church, with its power and influence, always considered magic a threat to their faith. Therefore, Orphen carefully avoided any unnecessary confrontations, since conflicts with the church would bring nothing but troublesome complications. As night fell, Orphen's group faced a new problem. Their food supply was decreasing. The stored food was not enough to sustain 3 people. While Orphen and Cleo sat by the slowly dying fire Magic as the apprentice was tasked with finding, he had to walk into the dark forest to hunt for something edible for the group. Despite being a mage's apprentice, Magic couldn't help feeling like a freeloader, having to work to serve his master and Cleo. While wandering through the dense forest in search of food, Magic unexpectedly encountered a strange girl named Fiona. She appeared suddenly and seemed very anxious, warning Magic that he should leave the area immediately to avoid danger. Although the event happened so quickly, and Magic had not yet had a chance to ask Fiona who she was and why she had issued such an urgent war, the situation became even more complicated. Just as Magic was still puzzled, a large group of villagers suddenly appeared and quickly surrounded them both. The crowd, armed with rudimentary weapons and eyes full of hatred, approached. Magic tried to use the basic spells he had recently learned, but against the large number of enemies, those simple techniques were ineffective. In the panic, he was shot in the shoulder by an arrow fired by the village leader, a tall, imposing man. The wound was painful and prevented him from continuing to defend himself. Left with no other option, Magic was bound and dragged away like a prisoner. He was taken to the village where he was held captive. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Orphen and Cleo realized that Magic had been missing for too long. Following his tracks, they discovered that the situation was dire. With his usual decisiveness, Orphen immediately planned a rescue for his apprentice. Cleo, ever combative, eagerly participated. It didn't take long for the two to locate the village where Magic was being held. The tense rescue operation began as Orphen and Cleo secretly entered the village. Upon entering, Orphen was immediately drawn to a flag fluttering atop a wooden pole. The image of an ancient, majestic creature was clearly visible on the worn fabric. Orphen felt a surge of astonishment as he recognized it as the emblem of ancient beings, the eternal enemies of mages. It was no wonder the villagers acted this way. It turns out they were dragon cultists, a faith deeply embedded in the culture here for centuries. Orphen recalled what he had learned. The continent was originally divided into 2 opposing forces. On one side was the Kinlek Church, representing many who worshipped the goddess and saw magic as a threat to be eliminated. On the other side were the dragon cultists, who revered the power of mythical creatures. Perhaps this village belonged to the latter, a community living under the protective shadow of dragons, creatures once dominant and revered as divine. The more Orphen thought, the clearer he understood the deep-rooted reason for the villagers' attack on Magic. It was not merely because of his or Cleo's presence, but because their very nature as mages posed a threat to those who believed in dragons. To protect their beliefs and safety, the villagers had acted preemptively, leaving no chance for outsiders like Orphen or Magic. Orphen's thoughts trace back to a distant history, when the continent was once home to 6 ancient, highly intelligent species endowed with magical powers by the gods. These creatures, though outwardly resembling animals such as wolves, bears, and horses, possessed formidable powers and were considered embodiments of dragons. Each species carried a distinct divine strength within them, and despite centuries passing, reverence for these mythical creatures still persisted in many places. Among the 6 ancient species, there was one particularly known for its extraordinary intelligence, referred to as the angels. Unlike other species, their only weakness was their inability to reproduce on their own. This compelled them to integrate into human society, becoming part of humanity long ago. This integration led to the creation of a new breed, a mix of angel and human bloodlines. Human mages with magical powers inherited from the angels. Initially, coexistence with humans did not lead to any significant conflicts. However, over time, a shift in mindset occurred. The angels, proud of their strength and intellect, began to believe that humans had stolen their magic. This suspicion gradually evolved into a deep-seated belief that human magic was the result of betrayal. Consequently, the angels lost trust in humans, whom they once considered allies. This rift quickly spread within the dragon-worshipping community. The followers of the dragons, who revered the ancient power of the angels, viewed the acquisition of magic by humans as an affront to the sacred creatures. Since then, human mages have always lived under the threat of being hunted by the dragon worshipper. The story escalated as the rescue team's conversation was abruptly interrupted by a loud noise. The villagers, having discovered them, quickly surrounded them with weapons in hand, leaving no way to escape without encountering trouble. This time, the numerous guns held by the villagers did not allow Orphen the time to prepare spells for a counterattack. He was forced to use all of his strength to escape the encirclement, seeking a place to hide before considering the next steps. However, even escaping was not easy. The opponents tightened their encirclement, forcing Orphen and his companions into a tight corner, not stopping there. A gigantic creature known as the Deep Dragon suddenly appeared next to Orphen. The massive dragon did not use physical violence, but instead attacked his mind. Chaotic images and intense pain flooded in like a storm. The overwhelming sense of loss of control spread throughout his body, making it impossible to perform any magic effectively. All the villagers were devout followers of the Deep Dragon, adhering to numerous strict instructions from this ancient creature. Among them, Fina played a crucial role, not only as a villager but also as the only nun capable of directly conveying the dragon's messages to everyone. Her task was not limited to following the dragon's commands. She also maintained harmony between the mythical creature and its worshippers. However, what set Fina apart was her lack of hatred for the mages. Unlike the other devotees, despite living in a community that despised mages and was ready to hunt them, she remained level-headed and compassionate. The clearest proof of this was when she had warned Magic about an impending danger. Throughout the time Magic was captured and detained in the village, Fina showed no cruelty or hatred towards him. Instead, she treated Magic with great kindness, no different from a friend. She not only provided him with food and temporary shelter, but also shared her perspectives on the mission she was undertaking. However, Magic could not help but worry about Fina. He feared that the honest and kind nun might be exploited by the old village chief. A man of great influence and scheming nature for dark purposes, Magic attempted to convince Fina to leave the village with him. He believed that if they both escaped, they would have a chance to evade the evil of those worshipping the Deep Dragon, especially from the hands of the old village chief, who seemed to be controlling everything from the shadows. Magic felt that this girl should not stay in a place where her life could be threatened at any moment. Many people, like the village chief, would not hesitate to sacrifice someone for personal gain. However, Fina maintained a calm and steadfast demeanor. She smiled sadly, shaking her head in refusal of Magic's advice. Fina explained that she could not abandon her responsibilities as a nun. She was entrusted with a noble task by the dragon species, a sacred mission she could not evade. She felt obligated to fulfill the duty that the dragon species had entrusted to her. Magic continued to hold onto the belief that his master, Orphen, would soon come to rescue him from this difficult situation. He was very confident in his master's abilities. But little did Magic know that at this very moment, Orphen was also imprisoned in the village's dark dungeon. This left Magic completely unaware of how serious the situation was. Meanwhile, feeling fortunate for Fina's assistance, his mind had not suffered further damage following the attack by the Deep Dragon. She healed him, helping him regain enough strength to face the upcoming dangers. However, just as the situation seemed to be calming down, Orphen sensed an imminent disturbance. At that moment, Saluo, one of the many suspicious figures of the village, appeared. He rushed down to the dungeon with a look as if he was about to investigate something. Realizing he had no other choice, Orphen had to fight fiercely to protect his companions. Not only magic, but also Fina and many others he vowed to protect. In this tense situation, Salio suddenly drew a glittering glass sword that reflected the light from the torches in the dark dungeon. This was not an ordinary weapon, but a symbol of the Kinloch Church, proving that Salio was not just an ordinary villager. It turned out that Salio was a spy planted by the Kinloch Church in the village to carry out a secret mission to assassinate the village chief. The end of the battle unfolded in an unexpected manner. While Salio was preoccupied with dueling Orphen, seizing an unexpected opportunity, Cleo quietly approached from behind. A precise strike with a wooden staff in hand rendered the spy unconscious on the spot, his body collapsing to the ground without a chance to react. This sudden intervention abruptly ended the battle, leaving everyone present in surprise. After the situation stabilized, Fiona began to recount what she knew about the dark history of this village. According to her, a man named McDougal had once come to the village bringing several novel war tools. He persuaded and encouraged the villagers to manufacture more of these weapons for defense against external threats outside the forest. Initially, the villagers complied to protect themselves, but as McDougal gradually gained more power, his ambitions also grew. McDougal did not stop at merely protecting the village from enemies. He also aimed to expand his influence throughout the region and even had intentions of taking over neighboring villages. The power of the guns and the fear he spread helped McDougal gradually become a force that could not be ignored in the area. He was plotting a dangerous plan to seize the sacred power of the sacred forest. According to the information shared by Fina, McDougal's target is the heart of this sacred land. It is believed to contain a mysterious power protected by dragons and ancient creatures since time immemorial. Driven by greed and a desire for power, McDougal's ambitions extend beyond controlling the village to manipulating forces far beyond human comprehension. Such calculated actions are likely to not only affect the villagers, but also plunge the entire area into disaster. If McDougal manages to reach the heart of the forest, it is certain that Deep Dragon, the sacred dragon deity protecting this land, will unleash its wrath. The consequences would be devastating, as the dragon's rage could destroy everything. The village, without a doubt, would be consumed in the flames of Deep Dragon's fury. None of those who worship would escape this severe punishment. Therefore, Fina advised Orphen, Magic, and Cleo to quickly leave this dangerous area. She understood that time was running out and they had to leave before everything collapsed. Deep Dragon would not forgive anyone left behind. Despite this, Fina had no intention of fleeing. Aware of the imminent danger, she was determined to stay and appease the wrath of Deep Dragon. As the only nun able to communicate with this deity, she believed that she alone could do something to prevent the looming disaster. She took on that responsibility as part of her mission bestowed at birth, and no one could replace her. Without hesitation, Orphen quickly headed towards the room of the village leader McDougal, determined to find answers for the recent tragic events. The heavy door swung open, revealing a gloomy space where the old village leader sat amid dim light. Orphen's gaze was sharp as he faced the elderly man. Without any greeting, he immediately inquired about the reason behind the leader's attempt to seize the heart of the forest, leading to an unnecessary tragedy. McDougal showed no fear or remorse even when faced with the consequences of his actions. Instead, he calmly explained that his intention to take power from the forest stemmed from a desire to protect the villagers from the oppression of the Kinloch Church, a notorious power on the continent. However, his explanations did nothing to quell Orphen's anger. For him, sacrificing the lives of innocent people to achieve a goal, no matter how noble in name, is unacceptable. McDougal, despite sensing his impending death, stood firm in his stance. Before taking his last breath, he left an ominous warning that the entire continent would soon be doomed. His words resonated like a curse, making the air in the room unbearably heavy. McDougal had asserted that he had witnessed the destructive power of a secret weapon belonging to the Kinloch Church. According to him, without preventive measures from now, all life on the continent, including many villages that worship Deep Dragon, would never find peace. Although his words were pessimistic, they instilled a profound fear in the minds of the villagers. After McDougal's last breath, the flame of his will seem to pass on to the villagers. Instead of being disheartened, they became more determined than ever to accomplish the goal he had left behind. The belief that possessing the heart of the forest would help them protect themselves from the threat of the Kinloch Church became their guiding principle. The villagers collectively looked to the nun whom they believed would lead them to the sacred land of the dragon. The atmosphere in the village became more charged than ever. Discussions were heard everywhere, many eyes filled with hope mixed with tension. Although the nun tried to warn them about the danger of usurping that sacred power, her words were like wind passing through their ears. For them, this was the only remaining path to protect their threatened, peaceful lives. Suddenly, a massive beam of light struck down in the center of the village, causing a terrible explosion that swept away everything within a large radius. The already tense atmosphere was now left with ruins and cries of pain. A strange light not only destroyed the material, but seemed to choke the last faint hope of the villager. Everyone was in shock, realizing that the wrath of Deep Dragon had indeed descended because of the many mistakes they had made. From above, the imposing figure of Deep Dragon appeared with unmistakable majesty. Its eyes, blazing red, looked straight down. Instead of running away, the remaining villagers knelt on the ground in despair. In their minds, this punishment was inevitable, and any resistance would be futile against the power of the divine creature. Amid the ruins, Orphen appeared, his demeanor steadfast in contrast to the panic of everyone around him. He quickly used magic to attack and prevent Deep Dragon from harming the villagers further. Orphen's sharp eyes glinted with determination as he summoned a smaller yet powerful creature, the offspring of Deep Dragon. Orphen believed that the presence of this creature could be the key to negotiation, or at least to stalling the spreading fury. He held up the young dragon in front of the overwhelming presence of the sky's ruler as if to convey a message of reconciliation. However, what he received in return was a cold stare. Deep Dragon appeared unshaken and unafraid of Orphen's attempts. For the ancient creature, what was happening was inevitable, a necessary purge to restore order that had been disrupted by humans. The dragon's authoritative voice thundered like thunder in clear skies, making the atmosphere seem to tremble. The words of the ancient creature were filled with disappointment and wrath. It accused the villagers, who had always been protected by the blessings of the forest and the benevolence of the deities, of daring to plot to usurp the heart of this place, an act that was not only treacherous, but also ambitious. The divine creature emphasized that this sin was far beyond forgiveness. It asserted that without harsh punishment at this moment, future generations would surely repeat these disastrous mistakes. According to the dragon, the previous forgiveness of the deities had been misconstrued as weakness, leading to increasing greed among humans. The villagers, intending to seize the sacred power, had broken the balance maintained since ancient times. The dragon's gaze, sharp as a blade, swept over each person in the crowd, causing all to bow their heads in fear and shame. No one dared to speak out in defense of their actions, as the accusation was indisputable. The crowd trembled, aware that nothing could persuade the mighty creature to abandon its intent to punish, unable to stand by as innocent people suffered the harsh judgment of this powerful being. Magic, with its quick wits and intelligence, immediately used magic to create a layer of illusory space that enveloped the entire area. From beside Orphen, a gun that had been prepared beforehand was drawn. With a decisive motion, he threw the weapon towards the enormous dragon. At that moment, he uttered a spell, igniting a fierce blaze that enveloped the entire area around the ancient creature. The flames roared to life, their brilliance so intense it seemed as though they could tear apart the gloomy skies. A violent explosion followed immediately, shaking the forest like an earthquake. Deep Dragon's roars of pain and fury echoed before being completely drowned out by the blast and the fierce crackling of fire. The massive form of the ancient creature gradually dissolved into the fiery tempest. Fragments of it were swept away like dust in a storm. The terrifying power that once spread terror across the sacred land was now reduced to ashes and silence. The next day, the group continued their journey, facing new challenges that awaited them. Orphen's greatest concern at this moment was having to account for one more mouth to feed, a task not easily managed given their limited finances. He couldn't stop thinking about how to manage in this situation, especially when Cleo seemed blissfully unaware of the many difficulties ahead. The group's next destination is the Fang Tower, a place filled with many memories and also the source of numerous troubles in Orphen's life. However, before reaching there, they must stop the city of Tarframe. This is not only a transit point, but also where magic will enroll in school, embarking on a serious academic path to become a true mage. At this time, the situation at the Fang Academy has become more unstable than ever. Recently, there have been successive assassination attempts targeting the elders, creating a tense and suffocating atmosphere. More than 10 high-ranking members of the academy have been mysteriously killed, causing confusion among both mages and the public. Rumors about these incidents are widespread, and most suspect that a clandestine force is plotting to overthrow the academy. According to several investigative reports, the elders at the Fang Academy have discovered a detail that has deepened their suspicions. The appearance of the assassin shares many similarities with Orphen, inadvertently making him a prime target for the mages hunting the perpetrator. The atmosphere becomes increasingly oppressive, and Orphen cannot ignore the malicious rumors that are spreading. On their way to Tarframe, Orphen's group is forced to stop at a small inn in the suburbs. As night falls, an unexpected event occurs. Suddenly, they are attacked by a mysterious figure. The assailant is incredibly agile, leaving no time for reaction. Orphen and Cleo rush to protect magic, but despite their efforts, the group cannot clearly see the face of their attacker. However, after causing chaos for a while, the stranger disappears as if he never existed, leaving behind a strange piece of paper on the table. Picking up the paper, Orphen realizes that the content is written in a cryptic script, blending ancient language and magical symbols. After spending time deciphering it, he discovers a message: who really is the heir? This question not only perplexes the group but also evokes a profound sense of anxiety. Clearly, the assassinations at the Academy and the recent incident are somehow connected. Someone out there is not only pursuing him but also seeking to sow doubt and chaos among the mages. Within a few hours, many of Orphen's suspicions swiftly find their answers. As darkness began to envelop the deserted path where the group was temporarily staying, the same assailant who had previously attacked them reappeared, this time with a clearer purpose. The opponent did not sneak up as before, but stepped forward to face them confidently. With piercing eyes and a threatening presence that made the atmosphere almost suffocating, the confrontation quickly escalated. The stranger was not only skilled in magic, but also possessed astonishing close combat abilities. Each of his moves was meticulously calculated, forcing Orphen to struggle in defense. Despite his best efforts, Orphen clearly felt at a disadvantage with each strike. Cleo and Magic could only stand at a distance, watching, afraid to intervene only to become a burden. As the battle reached its end, another character unexpectedly appeared, completely turning the situation around. A calm yet powerful voice interrupted the fight. Orphen, although exhausted, could not take his eyes off the person he had just dueled. As the light from a nearby torch illuminated the opponent's face more clearly, Orphen's heart tightened. The person attacking not only possessed superior fighting skills, but also had a face identical to Orphen's from a year ago. This scene left Orphen speechless. Although the unexpected battle ended with the mysterious attacker's withdrawal, attention still hung heavily over the group. Orphen, still filled with questions about the assassin, looks exactly like him, decided to put those queries aside. He turned to Cleo and Magic, noticing the confusion in their eyes. Taking a deep breath, Orphen began to introduce the person who had intervened and helped them escape the dangerous situation. Facing the curious eyes of his two companions, Orphen looked towards the woman who had just appeared. She had long black hair with a purple sheen, neatly tied back but with a few strands falling freely, a sharp face and eyes full of calm. The outfit she wore, styled after the Fang Academy, exuded the aura of a talented mage. Orphen spoke slowly in a deep voice, introducing her as Tiz, his older sister. She had been one of the outstanding students of the Fang Academy. Tiz had been an important part of the lives of Orphen and Azalie. The three had lived together for a long period before a calamity occurred, as the elder sister Tiz not only took care of her two younger siblings, but also guided and inspired Orphen when he first embarked on his magical journey. However, after achieving many significant accomplishments, she was entrusted with an important position at the Fang Academy. With her current role, Tiz was given a spacious house in the inner city area for convenience in both work and living. Now, amid the chaos enveloping the academy and the dangers lurking, Tiz decided to bring Orphen's group to her home for a place to rest and stabilize their spirits. Her house is located in a quiet area surrounded by dense ancient trees, providing a sense of security and isolation from the outside world. This would be where the group would stay, temporarily waiting for the latest information about the assassin causing turmoil. Cleo appeared delighted as she stepped into Tiz's living space. The interior of the house was elegantly decorated, combining the classical style of the Fang Academy with a warm ambience. On the walls hung ancient magical paintings. Tiz's desk was piled with books on various arcane subjects. Meanwhile, Magic could not hide his admiration for the extensive book collection. He was immediately drawn to a book on classical magical tactics on the shelf. Orphen, in contrast to his two companions, showed no surprise for him. This was not the first time he had been here. However, his eyes briefly reflected a thoughtful expression as he looked at the familiar decorative items, reminding him of the happy times when the three siblings lived together. As usual, Tiz maintained her calm demeanor, preparing a simple meal and then sitting down at the table with everyone, beginning to share what she knew about the current situation. According to her, the murderer was targeting not only the elders, but also intended to spread chaos and undermine the students' faith in the academy. The most worrying aspect was that Orphen's face was being used to mislead people, making him a potential suspect in the silence that followed. Everyone felt the gravity of the situation. Cleo broke the heavy atmosphere, asking about the next plan. Tiz advised that for now they needed to be cautious and wait for more information from various investigators within the academy. Tiz quickly returned to the academy, bringing back important news. Over the past few days, the series of murders of the elders at the academy had led many to suspect Orphen was the perpetrator. However, after thorough investigation, Tiz had obtained evidence that exonerated him. According to her, the person truly behind these incidents bore a striking resemblance to Orphen when he was younger, a detail that was shocking and caused widespread confusion. Tiz's report made the Academy's members reconsider what had happened. There was definitely someone scheming in secret, deliberately creating misunderstandings to frame Orphen. This impersonator was not only responsible for the murders, but also complicated the situation, leading many to distrust the young mage. The mysterious deaths seriously undermined Orphen's credibility, and it was clear this was not coincidental. The case became more complex than ever, as no one could identify the true identity of the person behind the fake Orphen mask. At this point, there were still many unresolved issues, so a definitive conclusion could not yet be reached. That night, in a moment of silence, Orphen sat alone in the darkness, thinking about everything that had happened. His mind was heavy not only because of the threats from the Deep Dragon and MacDougal, but also because many long-buried memories still haunted him. Despite trying to overlook them, Orphen could not escape the ghosts of his past. It was at this moment that a mysterious figure suddenly appeared, breaking the silence. Standing before him was someone with an appearance and face identical to his own, yet with a completely different demeanor. The stranger spoke without hesitation, introducing himself as Creluncello, the name Orphen had long left behind. He claimed to be Orphen from 5 years ago. His voice was deep and cold, but mixed with arrogance. He was once expected to become the heir to the Razor Power, a revelation that stunned Orphen. When reminded of becoming the inheritor of the Razor Power, Orphen recalls the great expectations placed on him when he was a promising young wizard. Orphen was once considered the most promising candidate, but subsequent events led him to abandon everything, including his name, Creluncello. The impostor continues with a mocking smile, noting that Orphen was once a strong individual with the potential to become the greatest, yet he chose to forsake it all to live the life of a nameless wanderer. Orphen's life took a completely different turn after a painful event with Azalie. At that time, Orphen had the reputation and the potential to become the successor of the Razor Power, a position representing supreme power in the wizarding world and the pinnacle that every wizard aspires to reach. However, instead of continuing on the path fate had set, Orphen chose to give up everything. He distanced himself from not only the right to inherit the Razor Power, but also from relationships and reputation without any regrets. When everything happened, Orphen could not ignore the pain and loss from Azalie, whom he regarded as his sister. Azalie's transformation into a monstrous creature and her quest to attain infinite power forced Orphen to face the biggest failure of his life. It was the moment he decided to let go of everything, to find a way to save Azalie, regardless of the cost. Meanwhile, as Orphen followed his own path, Creluncello, who claimed to be Orphen's former self, continued to attack and kill many leaders of the wizarding world. The powerful elders who could decide the future of the Razor Power were brutally assassinated, one after the other. Creluncello's actions were not without purpose. He believed that by eliminating many powerful individuals and potential contenders from the Razor Power, he would be the only one left to claim that position. The following morning, Tiz introduced Orphen to 2 of her students, a boy named Typhus and his sister Pachika. Shortly after, Tiz mentioned that recently 2 dwarves had visited, claiming to know Orphen. Sensing something odd, Orphen entered the room and immediately recognized them as Vocal and Dayton, none other than the 2 troublesome dwarves. Orphen instinctively furrowed his brow, guessing that they were once again caught in some sort of trouble. Meanwhile, at a corner of the city, Vocal and Dayton were on guard duty, looking quite pleased with themselves, as if they had just been assigned an important role. Bored from the normal tasks, they happened to see Cleo appear with her magical wolf, Loke. Being hungry, Cleo couldn't resist the allure of the roasted chicken leg in Vocal's hand. The 3 quickly sat down together to share the meal. Just as the atmosphere began to lighten and peace prevailed, a group of people clad in black approached from nowhere. Immediately heightening the tension, the leader of this mysterious group did not hesitate to act, using a drugged needle to swiftly incapacitate Loki and Cleo, causing them both to collapse unconscious to the ground. Vocal and Dayton were horrified and unable to comprehend what had just happened. They had no chance to intervene, and Cleo was kidnapped right before their eyes. As soon as the initial shock passed, the 2 dwarves immediately ran as fast as they could, rushing back to report the incident. With his usual decisiveness, Orphen prepared to set off to find and rescue his friend, while also pondering the identity of the mastermind behind the kidnapping. Deep down, Orphen was not only worried for Cleo's safety, but also felt that the reappearance of Creluncello from his past and this kidnapping might be connected. It was no coincidence that his former self from 5 years ago reappeared at this time. It seemed that someone was orchestrating the appearance of that imposter, making everything more complicated. Throughout the journey to find Cleo, Orphen not only had to face numerous dangers lurking from hidden enemies, but also felt like he was being drawn into a much larger conspiracy. Something is manipulating everything from the shadows, and the real enemy has yet to reveal themselves. Orphen feels that this is not just a simple kidnapping, but possibly part of a larger plan to trap him. With each step, Orphen constantly thinks about the real purpose of the person who created Creluncello, his past version. It seems the mastermind wants to recreate what Orphen left behind, decisions that once changed his fate and that of many he cared about. More importantly, Orphen is determined not to let this haunted past destroy his future and the life of Cleo. A young student warned Magic to be very careful when interacting with Orphen. Rumors about him have always swirled around like a wind, filled with half-truths and half-fictions. Oral stories about Orphen have persisted from 5 years ago until now. Back then, Orphen was the pride of the academy, personally trained by Childman. There were expectations that he would reach the pinnacle of magic and possibly inherit the title of Razor, a prestigious title from the greatest mages. However, not everyone saw Orphen in that light. The elders in the academy began to fear that his potential power would become a threat if it went beyond their control. They did not want an heir with great power that they could not control. Therefore, they secretly sent a group of spies to monitor every step Orphen took. His every action was closely watched. The secrets surrounding the existence of this group of spies were known to only a few, and Magic was among them, thanks to information disclosed by that student. It is unclear exactly why, but rumor has it that Orphen brutally attacked a mysterious spy, severely injuring the person. It is said that Orphen was indifferent to the dying victim and coldly left the scene as if nothing had happened. This story, though yet unproven, spread everywhere and was quickly exaggerated. As a result, many began to believe that Orphen was truly brutal, and the story became part of the unfounded rumors surrounding his reputation. This incident quickly raised suspicions among many other students in Childman's class. People whispered that the children trained in that class were mere puppets, only following orders without any compassion or morality. They were rumored to be many cold-blooded individuals, ready to destroy anything and anyone they perceived as obstacles without hesitation. This story further intensified the situation, causing Childman students, despite doing nothing wrong, to be caught in a whirlwind of suspicion and wariness from everyone around them. Their image in the eyes of outsiders gradually became that of ruthless individuals who could not distinguish right from wrong. This led many to start keeping their distance from the Academy's students, even viewing them as a threat. The battle between the present Orphen and Krillin Silo, his past version, was extremely fierce. Both knew each other's fighting style and intentions so well that most of their attacks were blocked before they could hit their target. Orphen realized that continuing to use old tactics would only prolong the battle unnecessarily, yielding no results in a challenging confrontation. Orphen recognized that he had no chance of winning if it were a direct fight. With quick thinking, he immediately collapsed the floor, creating a sudden advantage, and utilizing the chaos, he summoned the Sword of Light, a move so powerful that it took his mysterious opponent by surprise. The opponent, with a cold gaze, revealed that the purpose of this battle was not only to defeat Orphen, but also involved Azalie. That woman needed Orphen for a grand plan, and for that reason, he became a target to be eliminated. Both sides engaged in a fierce battle. In a moment of danger, the opponent's sharp sword pierced Orphen's arm. Despite the pain, Orphen was unflinching. With unwavering determination, he counterattacked with a critical blow, severing the arm of his opponent. Not wasting any time, Orphen used a spell and targeted the enemy's weakness. He then charged forward with a decisive and powerful move. However, what Orphen did not anticipate was that his opponent was only pretending to be weakened in the darkness. The foe secretly utilized a hidden power, creating a massive explosion that plunged the area into blinding light and intense pressure. The shock from the explosion disoriented Orphen. While Krylancello stood at a distance with a smug smile, the figure before him began to reveal a horrifying truth. The opponent Orphen thought was a copy of himself was actually a dummy, a cursed creation. The Krylancello facing him was not a complete entity, but a dummy crafted through the ancient magic of killing Lloyd. Azalie had inscribed a dark mark on the body of this dummy and used a cursed sword to strike it. That very strike transformed the insentient dummy into a youthful version of Orphen, identical to him in every detail. But it didn't stop there. The evil magic gradually breathed into the dummy the ability to think, turning it into a conscious entity with ambitions to replace Orphen himself. Over time, the dummy began to develop its own will, no longer merely a tool for Azalie, but harboring the desire to take Orphen's place not only within the group but also in the hearts of all those around him. As Orphen faced the threat of destruction, the mysterious dummy, originally his copy, began to rise with a new identity. Armed with powerful magical abilities and its own agenda, this dummy became a character full of contradictions. It not only accompanied Azalie on her mysterious journeys, but also gradually asserted its role in the story. However, despite possessing incredible strength, its artificial nature meant it could never escape the reality that it was just a copy. Orphen, despite facing numerous challenges, found strong motivation to continue fighting. Deep relationships with friends, many precious memories, and an unshakable will became the sources of strength that pushed him to unleash his full potential. The confrontation between Orphen and the dummy was not just a magical battle, but also a battle of wills. Each magical strike carried determination and the desire to protect what was dear. When the dummy shattered into pieces, Azalie appeared. She approached calmly with eyes gleaming with resolve, inviting Orphen to join her secret plan. When Cleo and Magic entered the room, the first scene they saw was Orphen lying exhausted on the floor after a strenuous battle. Previously in a lavish palace, a mysterious assassin had killed numerous people while searching for clues related to an important map. The atmosphere there was filled with darkness, clearly reflecting the danger of the perpetrator behind this bloody act. Just as he left the room, Orphen was suddenly confronted by a shadow rushing towards him with a terrifying murderous intent. Without much time to think, he immediately prepared to activate a spell to counterattack. However, before he could act, Cleo and Magic suddenly appeared. It was in this moment of distraction that the real enemy managed to escape. The following morning, Orphen went to Tiz to report on the situation. During their tense conversation, Orphen mentioned that he had eliminated a dangerous entity that he described as a mage-destroying machine. However, when Tiz asked about who was behind controlling that entity, Orphen remained silent, his eyes revealing a deep solemnity. He did not want to reveal the whole truth, partly because he did not want to draw her into danger, and partly because he himself had many things to clarify. Tiz then handed Orphen a special document, a detailed report on the missions he had undertaken over the past 5 years outside the Magical Academy. However, one surprising detail made Orphen pause. He had not been expelled, which should have happened long ago, and it was Tiz who had amended the records to include him. Orphen and Tiz, along with Magic, headed towards the Fang Tower, considered the center of magical power. On their way, the atmosphere between them was relatively light, but Orphen remained vigilant during their conversation. He asked Tiz if she had ever had conflicts with anyone that led to serious consequences. Tiz asserted that she always received respect from everyone. However, her answer was quickly contradicted by reality. Just after their conversation ended, a sudden hailstorm struck, heading straight for them. The large and small hailstones came with such force that it was clear this was no accident. In this tense moment, Orphen's senses became sharper than ever. He sensed every minor movement from the massed individuals surrounding him. Without hesitation, Orphen plunged into the battle, facing the entire group of adversaries alone. His attacks were powerful, combining magic and combat skills harmoniously to quickly overpower each enemy. None of the massed assailants could withstand Orphen's power for long. After defeating the entire group, Orphen approached one of them to ask why they had attacked him. The adversary, with eyes full of resentment, revealed that the attack was an act of revenge for their comrades who had previously been punished by Orphen. Something about that statement seemed familiar to him. Orphen thought about it and quickly realized the connection. It was likely that these individuals were related to a village chief he had encountered on a previous mission. This thought made Orphen even more vigilant, as such intertwined relationships could lead to even greater troubles. As Orphen was considering the situation, a figure appeared from afar. This newcomer was unlike the ordinary foes he had just defeated. The sharp gaze, dignified aura, and confident demeanor immediately made Orphen recognize him as an important figure. It was Hydron, a high-ranking mage of the Fang Tower. The man who introduced himself as Hydron, with a calm demeanor and a deep voice, declared that his purpose was to escort Orphen. However, Orphen was not easily convinced by these words. As a test, Orphen suddenly launched a quick and powerful attack to check the other's abilities. Hydron, with his excellent skills, dodged it effortlessly, making Orphen even more wary. The two entered the Fang Tower, and the atmosphere was tense with every step they took. Upon reaching the interior of the tower, a secretary of Factor appeared politely but urgently requesting Orphen to meet. This high-ranking mage privately led into Factor's imposing room. Orphen was curious about the unexpected meeting. Factor, with his sharp eyes and authoritative voice, quickly got to the point. He revealed that the Hydron Orphen had just met was actually a spy. This information stunned Orphen momentarily, but Factor continued to explain before he could react. According to Factor, there was only one class in the Fang Tower specifically trained in assassination skills, and that was the UA class. The students of this class were trained not only to become mages, but also ruthless assassins. Factor emphasized that the recent actions of the UA class had become uncontrollable, and to maintain the balance of the Fang Tower, they had to eliminate this class before things escalated further. Our story does not end there. Factor placed a stack of documents in front of Orphen. The pages contained detailed reports on the actions of Hydron and the students involved. Orphen flipped through the documents, his expression hardening as he read about the massacre of the followers of the Dragon Cult. The operatives trained in the UA class, under Hydron's direction, had executed everyone involved, leaving no trace except destruction. Upon leaving the Fang Tower, Orphen walked in silence, his mind shrouded by warnings from Master Yu urging them not to become enemies of each other. Those words haunted him like a reminder that facing the Master was not just a challenge, but could lead to unforeseeable consequences. Although Orphen did not show it, the tension seeped into his thoughts, making it hard for him to focus on anything else. Elsewhere, Cleo and her two friends had just returned from a stroll, still buoyed by the humorous stories they had shared. However, their joy was abruptly cut off when they spotted a figure with a covered face standing starkly on a nearby rooftop. Before they could react, the shadowy figure vanished, leaving a heavy air that seemed to foretell misfortune. When Orphen arrived, seeing Cleo with blood on her head left him shocked and furious. Hearing from Cleo what had happened, Orphen quickly connected the event to an assassin he had faced before. Determined not to let him escape, he immediately prepared to pursue. However, Tiz unexpectedly blocked his path. Her expression stern yet caring, she suggested handling the matter herself, while Orphen should focus on caring for Cleo, who clearly needed assistance. Reluctantly, Orphen agreed, realizing that Cleo's treatment was the priority. As Orphen tended to Cleo's wounds, Tiz quietly followed the trail of the assassin. Upon reaching the city center, she spotted one of them who intentionally revealed himself, as if to lure Tiz into a trap back home. After ensuring Cleo's wound was properly treated, Orphen decided he could no longer stand by regaining his resolve, so he quickly prepared and headed into the city. Tiz continued to follow the masked man, tracing each small clue he left behind. She eventually stopped in front of a dilapidated house, enveloped by darkness and silence, as if it had long been deserted. Without hesitation, Tiz entered, cautious yet decisive. As she went upstairs, she immediately realized she had walked into a trap. Two figures awaited her there, their eyes filled with murderous intent and dangerous confidence. One of them stepped forward, and Tiz was stunned to recognize him. As a former student of Master US class, he made no secret of his purpose, seeking a world map, something Tiz was completely unaware of. She pressed them for more information, but their responses were only mocking smiles full of malice. The confrontation erupted shortly thereafter. Tiz quickly activated her magic, unleashing powerful attacks to overwhelm her adversaries. However, the two were not ordinary foes. They coordinated closely with a clear goal of disabling Tiz's ability to use magic. Realizing her vulnerability, they focused their attacks on her throat to disrupt her spell, chanting as she gradually became incapacitated. They moved closer, ready to take her away. In a critical moment, a familiar voice rang out, sharp and authoritative. Azalie appeared, her eyes cold and fixed on the two enemies. With firm resolve, she declared that she would not allow anyone to harm Tiz. Azalie's presence made the assassins hesitate, clearly lacking the strength to confront such a powerful sorceress. After a brief exchange, they quickly retreated, leaving Tiz dazed and weakened. When Orphen arrived, his gaze immediately turned towards Tiz, her body still showing signs of the fierce battle. He helped her return home safely, though he was puzzled by Azalie's unexpected appearance that night. As she rested, Tiz reflected on everything in her dazed state. Earlier, she vaguely remembered seeing Orphen and mistakenly thought he had been the one to save her. Orphen, with a pensive face yet unable to hide his determination, carefully used his healing abilities to treat Tiz's injured fingers. Although the recovery process went smoothly, the results were not as expected. The fingers were reattached, but they seemed to have lost their original flexibility. Orphen sighed, weighed down by a sense of helplessness. Nonetheless, he did not express this outwardly, merely encouraging Tiz that everything was not yet over and there would be ways to remedy the situation. As night fell, Orphen left the house, his steps leading him to a quiet corner. He sat there, pondering the complex series of events that had entwined him in a vortex of secrets and plots. The area was silent, with only the sound of the wind blowing softly. Suddenly, a familiar voice shattered the tranquility. Azalie appeared as regal and formidable as ever. She approached, her sharp eyes betraying a sense of urgency. Azalie was direct, immediately sharing crucial information. She revealed that after a series of obscure actions, Master US class had entered the final phase of their plan. Their objective is to completely eliminate those who oppose them, while seizing something of immense importance, the world map owned by the Browning family. For Azalie, this map is not just an artifact. It embodies the power to change the world's order. As Orphen listened, Azalie's voice deepened as if she was recounting a tale from ancient times. She explained that the story of the map is intertwined with the history of the gods. Over 1,000 years ago, in an era of chaos, when the supreme god, Sweden Pack, plotted to overthrow and annihilate the other gods to seize absolute power. Azalie continued, her eyes reflecting deep contemplation as if memories from a millennium ago were vividly resurfacing. She explained that before disappearing from the world, Sweden Pack left behind a treasure known as the National Strategy, also known as the World Map. This was not just any map, but one containing powers and knowledge capable of controlling the currents of fate. However, after centuries of being lost, traces of it had become increasingly obscure. According to recent information that Azalie had, the map had once fallen into the hands of Childman, a once-esteemed sorcerer with deep connections to Orphen. Azalie solemnly warned that tonight, Master US class would certainly not miss the opportunity to strike. These individuals were ready to act to seize the map, and their aims were not limited to defeating Orphen or Azalie. While aware that she and Orphen could defend themselves, Tiz was a clear vulnerability. Given her current condition, it was inevitable that Tiz would become a target. Many enemies would not hesitate to use any means to achieve their goals, and Azalie feared this would put everyone in danger. Before departing, Azalie looked deeply into Orphen's eyes as if to convey an important message. She slowly drew an ancient artifact from her cloak, a legacy from the time of Sweden Pock, a mysterious item that Azalie called the interdimensional keystone. Azalie explained that this item would allow Orphen to move between different dimensions, a rare ability that could help him evade or even unexpectedly strike at the enemy. Orphen, after careful discussion with his two companions, led them to the base of the class. This was a secret area deep in the forest, surrounded by dense rows of trees and nearly impregnable magical barriers. Before entering, he drew a magic circle, activating it to create a protective shield around the group. Guided by the light emanating from the circle, the three of them slowly floated through the barrier, entering without attracting any attention. Inside the base, the space was dark and suffocating, with dim light just enough to see the objects around them. Orphen led the way, his eyes continuously scanning every nook and cranny, alert for any lurking dangers. While examining the area, an unfamiliar figure suddenly appeared. This person was none other than Hydrin, a magical warrior known for his brutal strength and ability to launch surprise attacks. Before Orphen could react, Hydrin raised his hand and launched powerful attacks that shook the surrounding area. However, Orphen quickly used defensive magic, dodging the attack just in time, and then created a small counterattack wave to block his opponent's advance. The confrontation lasted only a few seconds, but was enough for Orphen to realize that this enemy was no ordinary foe. Not wanting to waste more time there, he quickly activated the magic circle again, leading the group deeper into the base, which was believed to be the training area of the class. The atmosphere became more tense than ever. The thick walls, armor left behind from long ago, and many traces of past battles made the place look like a forgotten battlefield. As Orphen led the group, a deep voice echoed from the shadows. Hydrin moved closer, a half-smile revealing a mocking expression. The light from the torches on the wall illuminated his face, highlighting a long scar running from his temple down to his chin, seemingly provoking. He asked Orphen in a mocking tone, "Have you ever thought about this scar?" 5 years ago, when Orphen first came to the royal capital, everything around him was filled with strangeness and tension. Among the crowd on the bustling streets, a sense of unease rose within him, as if someone was silently watching every step he took. And as expected, Hydrin emerged from the shadows of a deserted alley. His cold gaze made Orphen pause, the unease now turning into fear. With a provocative tone, Hydrin slowly approached Orphen, seemingly eager to ignite a confrontation. He questioned whether Orphen thought the Fang was created to train people like him for any purpose other than to kill Azalie, whom they called the Chaotic Witch. These words struck Orphen like a sharp knife, nearly overwhelming him. The realization that the ultimate goal of their training was to destroy someone he had always considered family made it impossible for him to remain calm. In a panic, Orphen unconsciously unleashed the latent power within him. A powerful whirlwind erupted around him. The light from it swept across Hydrin's face, leaving a large scar from his forehead to his chin, a permanent mark from this fateful encounter. However, Hydrin was not easily subdued. He struggled in the vortex and then charged straight at Orphen, intending to finish him with a single blow. Time seemed to slow down. Everything else faded away, leaving only the image of the enemy charging in Orphen's determined eyes. In an instant, Orphen activated a teleportation spell, disappearing from his original position, causing Hydrin to miss his attack. Before Hydrin could realize what had happened, Orphen appeared behind him. With a powerful blow, he knocked Hydrin back in a strange place. Cleo slowly opened her eyes, but unfortunately, Factor's assistant was nearby. Before Cleo could say anything, he suddenly rushed forward, tightly grabbing her throat, his fingers tightening as if to snuff out her last breath. The attacker showed no mercy, preparing to use magic to finish her. However, at that moment, a sharp beam of light sliced through the air, severing the assistant's hand, blood spraying wildly as he screamed in pain. With his special magic, Loki timely saved her from the dangerous situation. Elsewhere, magic was also teleported to a completely unfamiliar location. The surrounding scenery was gloomy with crumbling architecture and a thick air smelling of decay. He tried to calm himself, the isolation causing his mind to reel. As magic was about to search for a way out, a figure appeared from afar, walking unsteadily but filled with danger. It was a member of the class who also seemed to have been caught in the teleportation spell. Magic sensed the growing danger as the figure rushed towards him with terrifying speed. Left with no other option, Magic quickly summoned a magical shield. The transparent protective layer emitted a faint light just in time to block a direct attack. The impact created a loud explosion, forcing both parties to step back. Although he escaped the initial attack, Magic discovered that the precious map he was carrying had fallen into the opponent's hands. The foe quickly stuffed the map into his clothing, a sly smile revealing his provocative intentions. Anger flared within Magic, but more than that, he worried that he would become a burden to Orphen. No longer hesitant, he took the initiative to attack. Magic focused his energy and fired a powerful beam of light straight at his opponent. However, the attack did not injure him at all. In a moment of vulnerability, the enemy counterattacked, causing Magic to slip and fall. Seemingly completely defeated, the opponent could not suppress a victorious smile. But as the magical light from his strike dissipated, Magic's figure also vanished. In reality, he had used a spatial displacement spell to dodge the critical strike. The tense confrontation continued, and this time the attacker prepared to deliver a deadly blow. Before he could carry out his intention, a loud bang echoed and a magical bullet struck the attacker, knocking him down on the spot. From a distance, Factor stepped forward. With a calm demeanor, Orphen cornered Hydran against a wall with a powerful kick that made the opponent collapse. Unable to resist, his eyes cold with a hint of mockery, Orphen's words carried a challenge. Hydran clenched his fists, but all efforts to resist were futile as Orphen continued to overpower him. Just as the tension reached its peak, Cleo appeared, having been teleported by Loki. She quickly recounted that when Factor's assistant had tried to attack Loki, she seized the unexpected opportunity, using all of her strength to strike from behind, knocking him down. Instantly freed from the dangerous situation, she quickly left with Loki to find Orphen. The group then proceeded directly to the room of the class, where the teacher was waiting with a book in hand. His expression conveyed satisfaction as he declared that he had stolen the most important book from Magic. However, Orphen's response was a scoffing laugh that seemed to shake the room. His mockery caused the class teacher to lose patience. He opened the book, hoping to find many valuable secrets instead of important content. The pages inside were filled with childish scribbles, nothing more than a prank. While the atmosphere in the classroom was fraught with tension, Factor and Magic suddenly appeared. Factor's gaze was serious as he emphatically declared that the unlawful actions of the class at the Fang Tower could not be overlooked. His statement made the class leader laugh, arrogantly displaying a dismissive attitude by suggesting that just a few people could do nothing against him and his subordinates. However, his confidence quickly vanished when Azalie suddenly appeared. Her presence carried an authoritative aura that seemed to freeze the room instantly. Upon seeing Azalie, the class leader immediately lost control, screaming wildly and charging at her with all his hatred. But before he could get close, Orphen quickly stepped in front, countering the attack with a swing of his arm. The two engaged in a fierce battle, but it was not long before the class leader collapsed, unconscious on the floor. Overwhelmed by Orphen, Azalie stepped forward, her eyes showing a hint of pity. Without saying a word, she raised her hand and activated her chaotic powers. A wave of magic emanated, enveloping the entire class. In an instant, all their memories of her were erased, leaving a strange emptiness in their minds. She turned to leave, but before departing, she looked back at Orphen. Her voice rang out with a challenge, telling him to come to the Kinlark Church if he wanted to resolve this matter. Without waiting for a response from Orphen, Azalie used magic and disappeared. Thanks for watching. Want more anime recaps? Subscribe to channels and turn on the notification bell. See you later. Watch those next videos.